Marissa Gelenscer and Deborah Vitali. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we've got you on today to talk about your Easy Green organisation. Perhaps if both of you could just give a quick introduction for the listeners, just a bit about yourselves and what brought you to Japan.
Sure. Okay. So I'll go first. Marisa Gelenscer. Actually, we've been in Japan since 2004. So I think if I do my maths correctly, that's around 17 years.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah, I don't think we ever thought when we first moved here that we'd still be here 17 years later. But we came here because my husband, we were based in Hong Kong before we came to Tokyo. Like many Australians, I'm originally from Australia, like many Australians in the 80s, he learnt Japanese at school. His Japanese is pretty good. So we were based in Hong Kong, and it made sense for him to then be transferred to the Tokyo office. And we've been here ever since. I'm originally from Perth in Western Australia. And my father is Italian, so we would travel back and forth to Italy every year. And then I lived there for a little while, came back to Sydney, then we moved to Hong Kong, and then based now here. We have two children, 13 and 11, a boy and a girl. They were both born in Tokyo, so it really does feel very much like home these days.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I love Japan. I really do. Partially maybe because both the kids were born here, and as I said, it really does feel like home. But yeah, I feel really lucky to call this city home.
Awesome.
So, thank you. Maybe Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
I'll see you.
Yeah. So I'm Deborah Vitali, and I was born in Toronto, also to Italian parents, both Italian parents, which is something Marissa and I have in common. So I also grew up kind of Canadian with the Italian, one foot in Italy, 1 foot in Canada, even though I was born and raised in Toronto. I came to Japan because my husband was transferred for his job. So I came over with, let's do it. I've been traveling my whole life, I feel, through my parents, going back and forth to Italy. But after university, I, decided to go backpacking and was away for 6 years, actually. I was the backpacker that didn't want to quit. And I had spent a few years in Asia, but not in Japan. So I was really excited at the opportunity to come here. I'm from Canada, but my husband's from Australia. And we actually met when I was an expat. So it was great to come and be an expat, but on the other side, the non-working expat. And I also have two children, two boys, exactly the same age as Marissa's children, 13 and 11. Oh, wow. Perfect ages. And one of them was born in Italy. The oldest was born in Italy because we lived there for a few years for my job. And the youngest was made in Italy, born in Canada. And we've been here since 2015. So like many, we had a plan to come here maybe for 2 years or 3, and it kept getting extended, and we're still here. And it's really exciting. So I don't think my kids feel Japanese, but they certainly feel, and we all feel like Japan is home for now. We're kind of like nomads without a wagon, so everywhere's home and kind of nowhere's home, which is a pretty interesting position to be in. And many of us are in that position in Tokyo in the expat community. So I love Japan. I love Japan because it's given me the opportunity to really dig into my passions versus working on my career. And now some of my passions have become kind of an unpaid career. And we're going to talk about that. And Marissa and I met through our school. Our kids go to the same school together.
Yeah, and actually when Deborah first arrived, the kids were in exactly the same classes at school. And we had a coffee one morning, and then we discovered that we had so much in common. We both had Italian heritage. But then the craziest thing is we both actually worked for the same company in Sydney.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in early 2000, and we lived on the same street, but we just didn't.
Oh, wow!
It didn't connect at that point. So
Gosh.
Life is funny in that way. It's a small world, and
it really is.
Maybe we were supposed to come together for this project. So
yeah, sounds like fate.
Yeah.
From the old country to the new country, and to the newer country, and then another new country. So 2 degrees of separation.
Oh, that's an awesome story. So yeah, let's jump straight in and talk about this project. How did it all start?
So I'm going to start off by giving a little background about what Easy Green is. So Easy Green is an environmental awareness group that was established in 2018. So we just hit our 3-year anniversary. Woo.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was started by 4 women who shared a passion and concern about environmental issues. And we just happened to all have kids in the same school, so it made it really easy to find one another. And we call our group Easy Green because EASY is an acronym. It's an acronym that describes how we work and what we do. So the E is for educate, because we firmly believe, and we all know, that if you're not educated about an issue and you're not aware of it, there's not much you can do about it. And it's really hard to buy into something that you don't understand. The A stands for action, because, you know, we all like to sort of read about things, and, you know, it's like, you know, we're all kind of, especially with, you know, the advent of technology, we're specialists in everything. But unless you take action, it is really hard to buy into something. So A is for act. You need to make changes and you need to act. S is to sustain, because, you know, these, you know, 1 or 2 actions does not necessarily sustain a habit. And, you know, you're in the fitness industry, and, you know, going to the gym once every 3 months, it's not going to help. You really need to make that part of your life to make a difference, to stay healthy. Yeah. And the Y is the most important letter of our acronym, and we separated it with a dash because you are where it starts. Sure, policy, corporations buying into things is really how we get things moving quickly, but it is the individual, it is the grassroots that makes things happen, and we're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that in so many movements around the world, which, you know, we'll not start talking about that, but you know, you are where it starts. Yeah. So that's what Easy Green is. Okay. I think what's really important about Easy Green, and something that we do not make any claims on, is that we are not experts, and we do not claim to be experts. We're passionate, and we're angry as well. And so the anger is the fire, you know, the fuel that stokes the fire. And we're angry about the state of the planet. We're angry about the slow response to some impending and irreversible disasters that are occurring. We created this community to find and to hear from like-minded individuals, but also to pull people in to create more like-mindedness, to create more allies in our fight for the planet. And it sounds really like, wow, fight for the planet. Absolutely fight for the planet. You know, as individuals, we do a lot of research. We try to educate ourselves. We didn't do degrees in environmentalism or in sustainability, but there's so much information out there. There's so much misinformation out there. So, you know, we're constantly growing as 4 individuals to make sure that we stay abreast of what's going on with our planet. And 3 out of 4 of us have recently done a course called the Climate Reality Project training course. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Al Gore started this a number of years ago. He had done a film called The Inconvenient Truth, and he was all about the environment. So now there's this course that has even further expanded our community, because it's taken us into some global training with people around the world who share the same passion. And you don't need to be an expert to take action. And I think that's what's really important, and what makes Easy Green accessible to everyone.
Yeah, awesome. And so how did you guys go about setting it up, and what were your sort of first steps?
So back in 2018, my son at the time, I think he must have been 10 or 11, and he was home from school sick. And he'd been playing video games, and he was like, I'm bored. And so I said, okay, well, let's sit down and we'll watch a documentary. And at that stage, we'd only just got a Netflix subscription, and there was this documentary called A Plastic Ocean. Now, I'd never heard of it, but I thought, okay, this is great. We'll sit down and watch it. And originally I thought it was about whales, because in fact, the beginning of the documentary explains that this guy who is a journalist from Australia who lives in Tasmania set out to create a documentary about whales, but then in this process discovered the fact that there is this terrible plastic pollution in the ocean. So we watched this documentary. I had tears like streaming down my face. And then he turned around to me and he said, well, do you think people know that this is happening? And, what is this? Like, it's terrible. And as a parent, I think we all know when you don't have a response, and because I was so emotional about seeing this film, it had really, really touched me. I thought, I don't know actually if anyone knows about this. So I started this whole process of just getting online, what is this documentary? Then I started obviously dropping the kids at school, started to talk to other people, have you seen this documentary, Plastic Ocean? Everyone was like, no, and I felt like I was kind of like my own little person in my own ocean, trying to shout out to other people. And then Deborah said, oh my gosh, I watched that documentary on the weekend. Do you think other people know about this? And so that was the point where we then connected, and we thought, oh gosh, we really need to do something here. And there were a couple of other people within our same community that then started to watch it, and that really was the catalyst and the starting point for us. And that was when I then started to actually assess the plastic that we used as a family on a daily basis, and discovered that we used a lot of plastic wrap or cling film. And then I started a small business called Ekohachi Living, which was to create beeswax food wraps, really to show people that there is an alternative out there. There are many, many alternatives if we just take the time to discover them and change our habits. So really that was the beginning of in April of 2019, where 2018, right? Where we all just literally had a coffee and shared the same passions and said, let's go for it.
Awesome. We have been using those beeswax covers for quite some time, and it's saved you for me. I'm the kind of person who struggles with cling wrap and glad wrap at the best of times, just making a mess of it. So they actually work quite well. I think they're fantastic. They're really cool. Yeah. So yeah, where did you go from there? What were the next steps?
So our next steps were pretty straightforward. As Marissa said, I think when you have an awakening, like when the veils drop, right? The Dance of the Seven Veils, the final veil drops and you can't unsee. And plastic, because we watched, and we're conditioned, right? You see something and all of a sudden that becomes your world. So after watching A Plastic Ocean, all we saw was plastic. And I think anybody who first comes to Tokyo and goes to a supermarket, you have to eat. And the first thing you see is oh my God, everything is swaddled in plastic. It's wrapped, it's rewrapped, it's wrapped again. So where to start? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You start with the plastic. Forget all the other things you hear about the climate. It's oh my God, we're choking in plastic. So we started with ourselves. We started with making people aware. I'd go to coffee and I'd say, do you really need a lid? You're drinking it right here. I'm pretty pushy, right? And so I started to talk about it. I started to share this, and then people go, you get different reactions, oh, she's full on, or oh my God, you're right. I took it. Someone gave it to me. I used it for 2 seconds. I threw it off. So we said, who can we influence really? What's a big group we can influence without, storming, the gates of government? We went to our school. And we said, hey, we're parents, we're concerned parents. And we had audience with our principal at the time. And we said, we're so passionate about this. Is there something the school can do to help reduce plastic usage? And we had a really huge welcoming by our principal at the time and said, I think it's great. Actually, we have an eco group in the school called, I won't say what they're called, but we have an eco group. And, they would love, they need a push. Can you go work with them? And we said, absolutely. So we're what's our quick wins here? And they said, well, plastic bottles. And Sam, I came to you and I said, why'd you have a water fountain?
I know. I was just about to bring that up. And what happened? 2 months later, I think you came back from summer vacation and we had a water fountain.
Yeah. And
it was actually a lot easier to set up than we thought it would be.
Yeah. It seems like if you don't tackle the whole problem, you can't tackle any problem. And the similarity between something like this and something like health is if you're wanting to get healthy or start a fitness program or start eating better, it's very overwhelming because all you can think about is the destination, the end result, which could take months and years. So you go, you know what, forget about it. So instead of saying, oh my God, we have to take all the plastic out of the ocean, all of it, we go, you know what, let's start taking plastic out of our school. So we we got new water fountains in our school because the other ones were really hard to fill up. So the secondary kids were going to Family Mart or buying, plastic bottles and bringing plastic bottles. People thought, oh, water's not clean in Tokyo. Water's really clean in Tokyo. It's quite drinkable. Another eye opener, right? Then we said, what about our PTA? Why don't we create awareness? Because this is the voice of the parents. This is the voice of the school. So we were able to influence our PTA, and they have since created a sustainability role that almost acts as counsel to any initiatives we do. We have this huge annual event called the Spring Fair, and we were able to have an almost plastic-free Spring Fair. These are huge steps.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
like they're huge, right? And really, it was just about having conversations. We didn't have to go get a PhD. We didn't have to have a government support. And I think when most people, when you talk to most people in a language they can understand, they're like, that makes total sense. And this is not hard. And I don't have to do anything huge to make an impact. So we started with that. And we go, okay, if we got the buy-in of our school, we know a lot of people in the community because our community is the international community. Let's set up a meeting with other international schools. So we set up like a conference almost, a workshop with the PTA heads from most of the international schools in Tokyo. And we spent one day and we just said, hey, everyone, tell us your best practice. Tell us what you do now and what you think you can do to influence your school to reduce waste. And then we went beyond plastic. We said, not just plastic, but how can you actually make a difference to the planet through reducing consumption, reducing usage, and then that awareness spreading to parents and kids. And I'm going to have a proud moment here. The result of this one-day conference that happened, this is pre-COVID, let's remember, we all met in a room. We gave snacks. I think snacks is a key contributor to change. Is that
snacks and alcohol?
Yeah, there was no alcohol, but there were snacks and there was pretty good coffee. And that snacks and coffee were all plastic free. But since then, we can say that one of those schools has created a sustainability position in their PTA. They've actually gone out and recruited someone that holds that office, like a sustainability officer, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And another school, they were so inspired, a couple of parents, that they said, we are going to replicate Easy Green at our school. And they have since created a mini Easy Green at their school, and they work hand in hand with parents, teachers, and their principal, and they've been hugely successful in a relatively short period of time. So, cut your own grass before you want to cut everybody's grass. That's kind of how we started all this. And then the next, big win is that we said, well, we need a website. And we're like, nobody uses websites anymore. So let's just start a Facebook page. Because if we want to stick to sort of our easy actions, we need to educate, create awareness, and create a forum for people to talk or to fight, to be angry at each other or angry at things. So we set up a Facebook page, and we just simply share articles and share pictures and ask people to do the same. And I'm proud to say that in 3 years, we have, I think, almost 1,000 followers on Facebook. Wow. We also have an Instagram page that, I don't know how many followers we have, but we're pretty, because we're like kind of Facebook people still. And so we operated primarily through social media and our community, and that's pre-COVID days.
Wow. Well, congratulations on what you've achieved so far. That's amazing.
When we started to get out there and get sort of known, like people go, oh, Easy Green, I've heard of Easy Green. We're like, it's pretty cool because Easy Green is like us, right? And people are saying, oh, have you heard about Easy Green? And so we started to get invites into different communities, to like preschools, play groups, speaking engagements, and workshops. So we started to get asked to come and speak. Remember, we're not experts, but we have a lot of passion, and we shared our story. But we also, it's important to tell people what they can do, like bite-sized pieces, like you do, right? It's like, okay, you want to fix your knee? Well, I'm not going to give you an operation, but I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 things that you can take with you today to make changes. Yeah. So that's how we went and reached out into and expanded our community by taking on speaking engagements or workshops within the community. So that was pretty exciting. And then Marissa's going to talk about kind of since then COVID hit, right? Then it was 2020. And our modus operandi was like, all we have is Facebook. What else can we do?
Yeah.
So tell you a bit about more about.
So I guess what I didn't explain as well before was that, you know, it was founded by 4, so there are 4 of us, two of who have now moved on. So Karen is based in Bangkok, and Pamela returned to the US. So Pamela actually returned to the US during this period of COVID, and we were kind of there was only 2 of us left in Tokyo. You know, what are we going to do, because we can't attend any of these markets or hold any of these workshops anymore. So I think we went quiet for a short period of time. But then we thought to ourselves, okay, let's get on this bandwagon, and, you know, what is Zoom? Let's figure out what Zoom is, and, you know, maybe we can move these workshops onto Zoom. And actually, we have recently had a composting workshop that we held over Zoom. And the idea was actually sparked from our Facebook community, that someone had posted that they were really curious about composting, but, you know, how do you do that when you live in a really big city? And so we had some successful, we had a very, very successful composting workshop via Zoom. And then I guess the idea for us is allying with other environmental groups worldwide. So it's been really helpful that we now have Pamela based in the US. And going back to what Deborah was saying before, is that we have all done this climate reality project training. So she did hers in the US, and it was very US focused. So she has then connected with other environmental groups that are working on the ground there. Deborah actually did a global climate reality project initiative. So she actually touched on lots of different areas all over the world, and has managed to then since connect with all those environmental groups. And when I did it, actually, it was in person just before COVID hit in October. I think there were like 950 people in the room in Odaiba. Oh, wow. It's crazy to think that there were that many people in the room just before COVID. So I've managed to connect on the ground here with a whole load of environmental groups. So it's been fantastic to have that opportunity. Now that most of this stuff has now gone online, we feel actually that we've been able to connect with people that we would never have been able to connect with if COVID hadn't have happened. So I guess we're just becoming less focused on Japan now, and you know, looking globally. And a lot of most of our members are still based in Japan, but as Deborah said, we're almost at 1,000 members in our Facebook group. And when we look at the analytics, we can see that there are people literally all over the world, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Just,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Before you go on, you said that you're focusing less on Japan and trying to expand more globally. Do you feel, though, that Japan sort of behind the rest of the world when it comes to environmentalism? And I mean, like you said, you arrive here and you see that everything is overpackaged and there's just plastic everywhere. Do you feel like that is the case, or and if so, why? Is it like everything else in Japan, it's just the way things are done and it's so hard to change everything? Or what are your sort of perceptions of the way things are done here compared to overseas?
Yeah, well, I think that obviously last year they brought in the charge for plastic bags, and we saw overnight that there was a huge change in people's outlook, and they took this on like it was that they've been doing it for the past 20 years, which is, in fact, if you look back at when we started using plastic bags, it's only really been a very short period of time. And the Japanese way of doing things is actually very sustainable and very eco, with furoshiki wrapping, the cloth wrapping, people bringing their own bento boxes from home. So this is a relatively recent issue in Japan with this overuse of plastic. But if you look, I guess, going forward, there is some really exciting policy that is happening with the government in terms of what their approach is for 2030, and I think that things will change. I think we've all been in Japan for long enough to understand that it just takes time. And I'm hopeful that things will once the ball starts rolling, as we saw with the plastic bag charge, and Japan's there's always a lot of innovation coming out of Japan, so I'm sure that they'll start to create alternatives that are just as good as the single-use plastic. But I'm not sure, Deb, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, here's Marissa, I think here's where you keep me really honest. It is very easy to look at the window dressing. It is very easy to say, oh, wow, look at all the waste in Japan, right? It is also very easy to buy into something called greenwashing, where corporations, countries, they say, oh, look at all the things we're doing. We're planting 4 million trees. But actually, we continue to burn fossil fuels at an, unsustainable or non-sustainable rate. So what you see superficially and what happens behind the scenes can often be two different things. So I'm from Canada. Canada, different parts of Canada doing different things. If I go to West Coast Canada, they banned plastic bags in supermarkets ages ago. They won't even give you anything. In Australia, they won't even give you like a paper bag. So they're doing a lot of things superficially, but then, if I look at my own country, I look at the oil industry and I look at clean water for native peoples and things like that. You could also argue that on the surface, it appears like everything's really going, chugging ahead. But when it comes to policy and large corporations, is it any better or worse? So this is when I think we need to have more of a helicopter view of what's going on globally, and applaud changes that are coming. Like when Japan says by 2030 we want to reduce our carbon emissions by X, and we're going to stick to that. But let's not be fooled by other things like, oh, look at these Olympics, we have recycled this and made a torch. That you got to be careful with stuff like that. Because the public sentiment right now is people know things have to change. But sometimes the ego is easily satisfied by superficial changes, like not seeing a plastic bag, right? Or going, oh, look at all the electrical cars, but how's electricity powered? Is it powered by sustainable energy? Is it, by fossil fuels? So it is complicated. And so I don't know if that answers your question. I would say,
absolutely.
Yeah, Japan has, like all countries all over the world, we're in a system called the capitalist economy. And the capitalist economy depends on linear growth. So you start with a fossil fuel and you create something that turns into garbage. And it's a linear system. And we know that it's not sustainable, right? I mean, plastic, comes from the ground. There's a limited quantity of, oil that comes out of the ground to create plastic. We will run out. The devastation caused by those things, right, along the way, not sustainable. We all know this. However, we keep buying into a system that says, oh, no more plastic toothbrushes, let's have bamboo toothbrushes. But we're still pushed into heavy consumption. There's a great little video I think everyone should watch called thestoryofstuff.org. And look, that's, 20 minutes of your life totally makes you understand what's going on and how you participate or can choose not to participate in that system.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for the recommendation. Well, I'm writing all this down, and we'll put it in the show notes for people to access as well.
And I think as well as like the youth movement, I think we need to be very encouraging of the youth movement that has started in Japan, because it's not the Japanese way to stand up and be different. And I think there's the Fridays for Future movement in Japan is growing, and there's a huge huge activism amongst the new generation. So I think it's our generation that really needs to support them and guide them and help them along the way. So it's really exciting to see anyway that in Japan that's happening. I think for the future for us at the moment, we'll continue with our virtual workshops. We've actually we'll continue to expand through our social media. We even went on, I don't know if you've ever heard of Clubhouse.
Yep.
So we were on Clubhouse the other night and talking about a new documentary that we had watched. So we're trying to experiment with different platforms as well to get the message out there. And just collaborations locally and globally. going forward. Yeah.
Environmentalism has no borders. You know, it's what you do in Japan, you know, impacts, you know, people, you know, in the Congo. Like, you know, we're all, it's a domino effect. You know, everything we do every day impacts everywhere. There are no borders. When you look at, you know, the big blue, you know, globe, the big blue marble, there's no lines drawn there. You know, it's like, you know, the Pacific flows and the Atlantic flows, and it touches all of us. So you have an oil spill, you know, on the coast of Florida, and, you know, it's going to go everywhere. It's not going to say, I'm just going to stay locally because, you know, this is Florida. I don't have permission to travel to, you know, Portugal or something. Yeah. This is really critical for all of us. We are the 10%. We are the privileged. We, you know, we have the opportunity to not see things, and that opportunity we're running out. You know, like, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but you know, we got to sit up and wake up. Like you tell your kids, you know, you could tell those stories to your kids, and then they grow up and they go, well, you know, actually, some of those things you told me, that's kind of fantasy. The reality is, you know, what's happening, and it's starting to creep into all of our worlds. You know, COVID. I don't want to bring COVID up, but you know, you look at something like COVID, it affects all of us so quickly. You look at the bushfires in Australia last year. Yeah. How many animals did they lose? What's the devastation? How many species were lost? How many people's lives were affected? And that's not just some remote country somewhere, you know, in northern India. That's like people on this call's backyard.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Amazing messages. And I think what you guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. If people want to get in contact with you, so you mentioned you have some social media sites. Can you sort of just reel off the names of those, please? And as I said, I'll put them in the show notes as well. But what's the Facebook group called? Is it just all Easy Green? Or?
Yeah, just if you just do a search on Facebook or Instagram for Easy Green, you'll find us.
Easy Green Group.
Yeah. Easy Green Group, yeah.
Easy Green Group.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And there's sort of opportunities. Obviously, there's a big education piece, and a lot of it's around what people can do within their own lives to make things better. In terms of stepping it up a level, if someone wants to actually get involved in your organisation and help you with what you're doing, are there opportunities for that type of thing? And what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So I'm going to take this actually because, well, you can definitely contact us through our Easy Green Group Facebook page.
Yep.
And we'll get the message. But I would say that anyone that wants to get involved, because everyone is Easy Green, not just, I mean, the four of us, you know, we're the Easy Green show, but really the show is for everybody. It's like general admission, you know. But I would say if you want to get involved, there's a lot of great films to watch. Netflix is like, you know, documentary heaven. But we recently, this meeting that we hosted the other day on Clubhouse, we were talking about David Attenborough's recent film called Breaking Boundaries. And what's beautiful about this film is, yeah, it does make you cry in the end, like spoiler alert. But what it is, it's like, we need to demystify the science, right? Because it is really overwhelming. You hear things like global warming, climate change, like dead zones in the ocean. And it's really overwhelming. And it took me months to watch A Plastic Ocean because I didn't want to feel bad.
Yeah.
Right? But then I took the courage and I decided I'm just going to feel bad. And because I'm going to come out of the other side, like the best way like to get over the pain is to go through the pain, come out the other side and watch one of these films. And I guarantee it's going to open your eyes. But David Attenborough left us the end of this movie with 4 actions. And even though I've been doing this pretty consistently for 3 years, these 4 actions are like my mantra. And I'm like, oh, I can remember this. You know, I can remember these things. 1 is cut your fossil fuel consumption by 50%. Meaning, if you're going to drive your car today, ride your bike. 50%, turn off a light. You got 2 lights on, turn 1 off. You know, reduce your consumption of fossil fuel energy by 50%. Plant a tree. If you have a backyard, you have a space. If you don't have that, give money to organizations that plant trees. That's carbon capture. That's a huge, it's gonna make a huge difference to our planet. The third thing is eat a more plant-based diet. It's good for you. It's good for the planet. It's not hard. Animal agriculture is one of the biggest contributor to planetary degradation. You don't have to be a vegan. You don't have to give anything up. Be flexible. You know, think about if I have 3 meals, can I make one of those a plant-based? In a month from now, can I make 2 of those? You know, so start with that. And the fourth is no waste. There's so many opportunities. You have to make like 1 million choices a day on what you do. Do you really need it? Do you really have to buy it? Will your children really be happier if they have that balloon or that little plastic thing from the Shein? Or is it just something to distract them and then we'll move on? So if you remember these 4 things, you've already started. And then, you know, please contact us. We'd love to collaborate. We'd love to, if you have ideas, bring them to us. Create a workshop, have our own podcast, you know, talk to your community. We'd be happy to speak and join in any kind of collaboration with anyone on something that really impacts all of us.
Fantastic. Well, ladies, thank you very much for your time today. Continue fighting. It's a fantastic fight that you're fighting, and yeah, I'd love to have you back on sometime in the future and talk about you know, future projects that you're involved in. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.